my trucks, my whatever, it's not yours. And sometimes it's easy to slip in that, even with your employees more, it's not, it's ours at best. I always made sure I made my president look good. You always give the president credit first, it helps you keep the job long-term, right guys? Because also they are the one who really is the ultimate owner of the organization. They're the ones who got elected, we got hired when you were in that role. I always let my president at banquets and things talk first. Because if I said everything, he had nothing left to say, he looked foolish. I never wanted him to look foolish. So I let him talk first, make his speech first, and then I could backfill it, or I could say, and as President said, and those who've been around, Dave Behringer did that real well for me last couple of years, right? You know, Dave made me look good whenever he could. I think Michael Caldo hopefully will make John Barry look good. I'm not being, it may sound foolish and silly, but it's also important to always recognize where the authority is. Every so often, sometimes, we've had people tempted to bypass those lines of authorities. It never, I'll tell you, governance-wise, it never works out well if you try setting up situations where ultimately our elected leaders are not in charge of every aspect. But the other element is once you hire a CEO, that CEO should have all the responsibility for supervising staff. You don't want it. Who's accountable is the CEO. You're that person's, you're one employee. If you are the council president, you're one employee, that's that CEO. And the CEO is responsible for all the screw-ups, be it the truck driver messing up or the finances being wrong. So understand your role if you go this direction. I think we're a much stronger organization because we've got these partnerships, and there's also a mentoring program. I think it's probably underused, but one of the things that is very valuable both for council presidents and new executive directors is there is a mentoring program. You have a new executive director, check with these guys and get them assigned someone to mentor them.
Mostly Tom.
Because it's a very different world, and I'll wrap up here soon because these guys got things to talk about, but it's a very different world if you hire a CEO from somewhere else, and some of the CEOs in the room have worked for other organizations. We're not the same as Goodwill, Red Cross, United Way, Lutheran Social Services, whatever. We're a member organization, we're a lot of subsidiarity, and some of the people who fail come from these other organizations thinking that they're gonna know how to run our organizations, and they don't. And so a lot of times they fail, crash and burn, and so be very careful as you hire a new person in who's not of ascension or been part of the culture. In Madison, we have had great success of hiring from outside the associate executive director, and we always told the board, you don't have to hire my assistant in the last case, but that person will be ready if you want them or if you want to go outside. But very often the best CEOs I've seen of people maybe had another role in the society just under it, and you brought them up. So be real careful when you're bringing people from the outside. It takes a while. We're not an organization, aren't we? It's a wonderful one, but in some ways we don't operate like many others do. So use the strengths we've got. So the mentoring program will pair someone with someone from the similar sized council. So if you have a mid-sized council with a couple of stores, you'd find someone similar. And same thing a lot of times for council presidents. Sometimes it's a whole new role that's got just-in-time learning. And sometimes it's just, that mentor is going to just be someone to talk to. A lot of times, you know, it's a little frustrating being in any leadership role. And as a CEO, sometimes I get back from my board meeting and I go, oh my God, I can't believe these guys did this to me tonight. It just happens, it's part of any business, you've been there probably. And at some point my wife doesn't want to hear about it anymore. My employees I can't talk to, so at some point, if you're on either side of the equation as a council president or as a CEO, you just need some allies to talk to a bit where you were. Jim Diltz was Tom Abadi's predecessor. You know, we called each, and John Barry did sometimes for me, we called each other, talk each other off the walls. You know, don't quit, Ralph. You know, don't quit, Jim. You know, it just happens. You know, give them a chance and you get back to it. And remember, that the Holy Spirit's working here and He's not going to let us down. So having those relationships, no matter what role you're playing in these leadership roles, really will help. So use that. That was set up probably about 10 years ago, and I think it's still underused. Could be used more. So we've got a great team. It's the first time we've had under my initiative, we started putting executive directors on the board, because that's been very useful. Sometimes the board really didn't have anyone that was directly attuned to what it means to run an operation day to day on your level, not the national. And so these guys are probably a useful input there. You've got two good guys here at home for a lot of years. And any group that has two Ralphs in the crowd is in trouble.
In this case, Ralph's going to follow Ralph, and it's big shoes to fill. I just wanted, first I was just going to tell you my own experience. I've been an executive director for a little over 8 years. I was the first executive director in our district council. The district council was already running at about a little over $3 million in total revenue. It's now about 6.5 to 7, and that a lot of rockiness along the way. And I guess part of it is my passion for this workshop. First of all, Tom and I are currently serving on the National Board of Directors, representing CEOs and EDs across the nation. But John made a comment. I think Tom was ignoring it. I did hear it, but I made a comment at a board meeting, I think in January, and he just said, look, I think the National CEO Task Force should be offering workshops in the assembly for the assembly. And so we did it. So we can say we were listening, okay? So, but what really, the impetus behind this was over the last the last year, because I've been in about a year, over the last year I've probably had 5 different council presidents come to me and want to talk about hiring an executive director. And so I know that there was a lot of interest in that. The world is more complicated on an ongoing basis, we all know that. And so many council presidents and council boards are looking to be able to offload some of that complexity. So, and an ED is one of those ways to do that.
Just because I want to be clear since we're going down this road, is there a difference between a CEO or an ED? Or were there one and the same?
I'll try this, and then we'll let some, because we've got CEOs and EDs in the room. I'm an ED, that's my official title.
Yeah.
There's some others in the room that are CEOs.
But they're different jobs, or they're one and the same?
They're the same job.
All right, that's
Am I okay with that? Everybody's in agreement? It's the same job, generally, and you guys take issue with it, but generally, the bigger operations designate that position as CEO, and generally the smaller operations run with executive directors. Is everybody in agreement with that? Good, I didn't screw up. This is good. So don't get worried about the CEO designation. The biggest councils in the United States have CEOs. Okay?
Well, I thought they were one and the same, but I just wanted to clarify.
It's good to clear up that terminology right off the bat, so that's good. So, but that is the difference. I know, like Des Moines, it was just like in the last year, they designated the executive director there, Steve Haveman. They changed his title officially to CEO. But that council too has been growing very rapidly, so it's a large council at this point, okay? But I've had a great relationship with the presidents that I've served under, and I have seen it from the beginning as being a support. Now, what I found too is as the presidents learned how to really collaborate and utilize my skills and the staff and so on and so forth, well, it's become a real synergy between the two. That's the way I think it's supposed to be. I know for a fact it's not that way everywhere, because there are problems out there, kind of conflicts between a president and a ED or CEO. But when that can work, and the current president, who's she's leaving September 30th, dear lady, and the district council where I am, we're all gonna miss her, the staff's all gonna miss her. She was all about the work of the conferences, driving that council to excellence, the whole volunteer side. And she had input constantly, because she actually comes into the office. She has an office, in our admin, and she's in the office 3 and 4 days a week. So we talked always, and we shared struggles, and staff was able to support her and her initiatives. She always knew what was going on the staff side, and encouraged and directed, and then she could talk with authority at the council meetings also. So it's been a great rapport, and it's been very, very good in my situation. It didn't start out that way. So it's gonna be a little rocky. The president, when I came on, the president at that time had been president for a year without an executive director. He was used to calling the shots. He was used to everything coming to him. And he struggled to let that go. But over time, we're not perfect. And over time, it worked itself out. A little heartache along the way, that's okay. You know, Jesus expects us to suffer a little in this life too. You know, there's redemption in that suffering. So what I wanted to do is we'll just go through these slides. Don't worry, there's not a large slide deck. I added the title so that we had 5 slides, okay? These are coming from, this is actually the actual slides from Invitation for Renewal. This is talking about governance. And so board responsibility. And I'll tell you too, you don't have to worry about taking the pictures of this, because I've actually printed out 30 of them here, full slide sets. So you guys, I'm trying to make it easy for you. That's what staff does. Recruit and select council. So this is board responsibility. So recruit and select council executive director, develop process, determine skill sets and experience. You got to decide who you are, what you need, and go through all of that. And the board needs to be clear about that. They need to talk it through. It's not something that, we need an ED. Put out a call for an ED. Let's hire one here day after tomorrow. That's not going to work. The board needs to make up their own mind. They need to be talking it through. Design position description. I do have some up here, and I'm not going to just throw them out there, but we do have some examples of ED job descriptions. I've even included the one that I was hired under. So, don't reinvent the wheel. So that's one of the biggest things that I can stress is we are one society. The beauty is these are your brothers and sisters in this room and throughout this whole assembly and across the nation. Vincentians share their experiences. So don't hesitate to ask for help and advice. It's the Vincentian way. I can call any of the people that I know across the nation and ask them what they're doing with this or that. They give me the inside scoop on it. I know how that is. Please, if you're hiring an executive director, look for the resources. Get as many answers as you can before you hire them. That way, we don't have to make all the failures and all the mistakes ourselves. Know the rules for interviewing and hiring. This is one of the things too, and especially I would suggest, and you guys be sure and step in on this, or anybody, I would suggest if you have a board that really has no experience hiring people, you have no business doing it all on your own. You really need to bring in either a firm or somebody that is willing to help guide you through that process, to help you know. There's things in an interview, you can't ask. I mean, you need to know that. Now, you won't have to worry about it after you hire the ED, because they're going to be in charge of that, okay? But right now, it's the board's responsibility. But you really need to think about it and think it through. Confirm the process, and I would say confirming the process is both on the board side, you go through it, everybody's comfortable with it, you go forward. But in addition to that, I would bring in somebody or hand it off to somebody else, another counsel that with experience, that could look at it and say, it's a good process. Or they're gonna say, maybe if you added this and this, or took this out, this is how I would do it. It's just gonna make it better. It's gonna make it more successful. You don't wanna fall on your face with it. You don't wanna hire an ED and 3 months later the person's gone and everybody's mad. You know, you don't wanna do that. Communicate the process. Again, make sure that everybody is on board and your candidates know what that process is too, okay? So again, this is board responsibility. So after you've hired an ED, this is the board's responsibility. Support. Notice support's first. I like to point that out too. I've only pointed it out to one of my presidents. And assess the performance of the ED. It is important for a performance assessment. They need to know how they're doing, okay? And again, if nobody on the board, and I can see this because of my district council at times has been this way, there might not be the expertise on the board to be able to do a good performance review. Then find somebody that will help you and carry you along the way and help make that happen. So again, it's clean. Clear understanding of expectations, goals, objectives, roles, and performance measurements. That's not easy, but it's really important if you want success. Really, again, I come back to the board needs to know what they're looking for. What are the measures? What are they expecting to do? What is this ED going to do in that position? Clear communication channel with the board. And certainly, I think it's probably this way in all the bylaws. I'm an ex officio member of the district council. So I'm officially on the board. I don't vote. Employees don't vote, ever. So I'm just, be sure and stress that too. My board president, amazing lady, she starts sending out emails. And she said, I sent this out to the board. I said, I didn't get it. She said, well, I said, I'm on the board. You know, that's all our roles. That's the role of the president, that's the role of the ED too, is to help clear communication, help everybody know where it's at. And she has since added me to the official list of board members in our council. And I went, okay. That's what the bylaws call for. I even showed it to her. She's a very governance-driven person, so it was beautiful. And she apologized, so I wasn't offended.
Question?
Yes?
You said they report to the board, but who on the board specifically would give the feedback, the performance review?
Performance review, well, I think the next slide goes into a little more of that.
Okay.
If not, I would probably defer that to either Gus or Ralph, because they can speak to that from a little better. Mine hasn't always been as perfect as it should have been. But it's worked, but it hasn't been as perfect as it should be. Okay, the ED does not work for a person. This is one thing that I remember going to invitation for renewal, and I was pretty new ED, and I sat with Ralph one night drinking wine after the sessions were over, and he explained to me that no, it should not be. The president does not drive everything that the ED does. Now, you can't have too many bosses, okay? That's not fair. To any employee, it's not fair to even a volunteer that they have to report to 3 or 4 people. But generally, there's an executive committee that actually has the real say or the full say over what now that might be designated to the board president on a day-to-day basis. But there's recourses too for the executive director if there's a problem, if you don't have a clear communication, if you're struggling with the board president, there should be some other people on the executive committee that you can at least go to and, bring it up and see if it can be worked out. Council bylaws should include a process for removal of ED. It's funny because it seems like it's strange, but I see that as my role too, and that is, as I was going through our council bylaws, and we just updated them recently, and I said, you don't have a process for removal of an ED. And that seems crazy that an ED would be asking for a removal process. I look at the long-term health of the organization, and when I'm not there, and the next guy or gal might not be as nice as I am, who knows? But that should be in the bylaws. Bill?
Also, a few years ago, there was a resolution passed at the national level that for removal of any ED, it had to go through the regional vice president.
Right.
So,
And I can't remember, I saw that regulation someplace exactly, but it does have to, the regional vice president has to be involved. And I think it might even go clear up to the president. That's not, or it could be.
I think it's
appealed
the
to the
national
president.
CEO should be informed.
The national CEO should be informed. So it's not something that as a council president one day, you just really get irritated with your ED and you say, you're out of here.
That's
It's not
for your
that simple.
own protection. You don't want to be sued because you don't know what you don't know.
So again, caution and thoughtfulness. Thoughtfulness, I think, is the thing that can help us through all of this stuff the best. Clarity about functions, boards, EDs. Let's go to the next one. I guess it didn't say that, so I thought maybe it talked about exactly what that is, but there is the executive committee should be overseeing that CEO ED role. And they should be doing the bulk of, and ours, what we've got is the executive committee is the one that actually does my performance review. And then it's taken to the board in an executive session, and the board agrees with it or endorses it, accepts it, and then go on. And then if things all go well, they offer me a raise or the door. I don't know, but let's see. Participates in so executive staff responsibilities. Think about this. Okay, specifies process to achieve outcomes. So this is it's a performance role. You're trying to drive the staff, the resources. You're trying to drive if you've got stores, if you've got pantries, you're trying to drive that. Participates in decisions about what may and may not be done. The goal is flexibility. That's got to be the case. You got to see the whole thing as it's the Holy Spirit working in that, and hopefully you can see the Holy Spirit and be flexible. Informs the board of resources required and recommends cost-effective allocations. So again, the ED and the CEO, in the best of circumstances, are trusted a great deal by the board. They listen to them, but the ED or the CEO, they're trying to find ways to make everything efficient. They're looking for new ways. They're talking to people. They're trying to bring in resources. They're trying to bring in clarity and efficiency to the organization. Monitors and reports progress, initiates conflict resolution, leads staff operation. I want to reiterate, and this was something that I've struggled with myself for a while, and that is I had a board president for a while. This was in the transition from him being in charge of staff to me being in charge of staff. I had a board president that really wanted to dabble, when it was convenient, he wanted to dabble in employees. They gave me edicts about we can't fire this person, we can't fire that person. He pushed hard and wanted to, he had been an accountant most of his life, so he actually dictated the first 2 accounting managers that we had hired. they were complete failures. It was not his skill, it was hiring. And so the last one before, at the end of his term, I just told him, I said, you're not a part of this process. I'm handling this. I will keep you informed. I'll tell you what's going on. But you're not on the interview team, and I really don't want to hear your recommendation. And it was just, it had to be that way. We had some real failures, and he was wanting to hold me responsible for the accounting failures, and he wouldn't let me even fire the person that really needed to be fired. So I guess that's one thing that there's some challenges in all of that. I just throw that out so that you see that ahead of hiring somebody, or even if you already have an executive director, we're all people. It's not going to be simple. This is a slide that, like I said, I've got copies of them for you here. This is one, I think they should have used like R and I instead of X and Y. I have to keep going back to the key to decide which is which. But governance is the board. So governance it's the board president and the board itself. It's not the executive director. Now, the executive director may very well be a big support in good governance. And that's what I like to think that I am. I am that resource that helps to bring about good governance, but they drive it. It's a volunteer organization. We don't want to ever get away from that. Administration. So the board president is involved, not responsible. CEO, ED is responsible. Decides what? That's governance. That's decision made by the volunteer board. They decide what. You don't get to decide what as an ED. You don't decide what. The board decides what. Your implementation, okay? Decides how. Implementation, that's the ED, okay? Makes policy, board. Board, president, makes policy. Carries out policy, executive director. I mean, once you see the pattern, it really does flow through everything. Sets goals, again, the goal setting is on the board level. It's driven by the volunteers. How to achieve those goals, plans to achieve those goals, it can be done with the ED. Now, in both cases, and it's worked very well in my situation, president is involved and knows what I'm doing, and she sees it and even agrees. I ask for her input. And on governance, she's asking my input because she trusts too. I am of Vincentian, I care deeply about the organization, and I want to see it go. And she knows that I have some good ideas. I've been around the block a little bit. I have some battle scars to prove it. Sets goals, again, plans to achieve goals, ED. Sets goals, board. Reviews plans, board. So they're going to review it. You're going to set out the plans, and you're going to hand it to the board. The board says, hey, those are pretty good plans, or take them back to the drawing board and redo them. Okay? Implements plans, ED. But again, president, the board knows what you're doing. They hear what you're doing. Monitors progress. Everybody should be monitoring progress on both sides, all the way up. Like I said, I have 30 of them here, so hopefully I've got enough of them so you guys can take those slides home. Okay? If you haven't been to Invitation for Renewal, at least the first time you ever saw these slides. If it's been a long time, like I have, I probably forgot that these slides existed. But anyway, with that, I want to turn it over to, you want to take it, Tom?
Thanks.
Raise your hand if you've got questions along the way.
We just saw a lot of points here. When I got hired, I was told I had my 3 top requirements were: don't lose the tax exempt status, don't get sued, and keep an eye on the money. So it's evolved. Just going back to something Ralph mentioned about having a meeting in a bar, I don't recommend it. It just doesn't work well. The CEO title, the other benefit of that, we found that if you go in to talk to a big donor, you go in to talk to a bank or a big sponsor, it helps you get in the door a little easier using the CEO title. That was one of the other benefits of that. Okay. Right now, I'd like to bring up my NCM, Gus Gelardi.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Ralph. Well done. And thank you, Ralph, as well. All right, my name is Gus Gelardi. I come from Long Island, New York.
Could you a little closer to the mouth? I'm sorry.
My name is Gus Gelardi. There we go. And I come from Long Island, New York, but actually I was born in Belgium many years ago. And I've been with the society now for about 11 years. I started off as a conference president because the pastor of our parish at the time didn't like the guy who was leading the conference, and he wanted to get rid of it. And then Jim Claffey came out. I don't know if anyone knew Jim Claffey, a longtime member of the society that when it came out, because he was a friend of the pastor, interviewed me, went back to Tom and said, I'm a keeper, right? So I started off as a president. It took me 6 months to get my feet wet and learn about that. My prior history was in the restaurant business, and I've lived and worked in several parts of the world. So I had a good dynamic experience. I have an MBA in finance, so I love money to the point where how can I use it the best way? So when I came in, after the first couple of years, I became the vice president of the district council, right? District council. And with that, I joined several of the committees that Tom led at the time, or worked with the board of directors, not the board of directors, the finance committee, the governance committee, the development committee. So he got to know me because I attended some of these meetings, gave my input, and I got to know him better as well. And then finally, I moved up. My predecessor was his six-year term was up, or he had 2 3-year terms, and they were up. I'm halfway through my second term, and as a president, I am head of the board of directors, the finance committee, the executive committee, and all these other committees that are involved, the development committee and some stuff up there. So I'm involved in all the interactions. You know, as with anything, a team has to work together. Do I always agree with Tom? 98% of the time. Every once in a while, I had said, you know, I still belong to my conference. We have a conference in Huntington, Long Island, and I'm still there. And so I can know what's going on within the conference myself. Every quarter we have district council meetings. We have 5 different district councils, and we attend the meetings every quarter to see what's going on. And it's like with the SVdP surveys, you know, I'm involved in the day-to-day operations of all the things. What's going on? What do we need? And if I see something that maybe that Tom and his team can provide better, we discuss it. You know, we set the budget together. We just did that for this upcoming fiscal year. And we look at what formation things we need to help our people. We have created what we call a FAR committee, formation and revitalization. Revitalization was really key after we went through the COVID experience. You know, it took us almost 3 years to get back to the level of standard of excellence that we want. People weren't having meetings, people were using Zoom. They overdid it to the point where we weren't even doing home visits. So it took us a while to get all that back, to get the people in, bring some new people in as well, which was difficult because some of the people left and moved to Florida, they did whatever during that time. So it was a struggle to get us back, and I think we're in pretty good shape now. We have 68 parishes, and with 64 councils, because as you know, many different places now, you have one parish handling 2 churches, or two parishes, and that's happening all across the country. It's tough, but it's something that we work with Tom and with the rest of the board of directors to say this is what we're going to try and do to make sure that we cover as much as we can. At the end of the year, I do an assessment of Tom, and there's a 3 or 4 page procedure that you follow. What do we do? What do we agree from the beginning? And every quarter we have a board of directors meeting, an executive committee meeting. So we're not waiting until the end of the year to say, well, we lost $1,000, we lost $100,000, whatever it is. We know along. We have a CFO report that comes out at the same time, and we constantly check to see how we're progressing. You don't wait till the end of the year to say, uh-oh, we're in trouble. So we know, okay, what can we do to make corrections during the year what do we need to do more than we're doing right now to make sure that we keep up to the budget what we have to do. Then it's my job at the end of the year, we go speak with Tom, assess it, talk about it, then he leaves the room when the board of directors are there, then I come and we talk to the board of directors. As I said, they're with us every quarter, so they know what's going on. And then we talk to them about, or I talk to them about what I think Tom's performance was. Here's the proof, here's what he did, here's what we said we're gonna do, here's what he did. He hired a development director, he did this, he did all the things that we had required him to do ahead of time. And he did it all. So this is what my recommendations are. And then we'd have that discussion. And when we do that, he's not in the room, and some of the non-voting members of the board are not in the room. It's about 12 of us there then. So then we decide, Tom, you did a great job. Tom, you did this, and here's what we want to do. And as working together with the people, I think important thing is, even on Long Island, the west end of Long Island is different than the east end. So you have to have personalities that can adapt to that. There's some people that have been around for 15, 20 years, in the system. Some people have been 15, 20 days. So we have to be able to manipulate that and find out, right, this area needs this area needs that, and this area needs this. And how do you do that? Well, you get to the conference presidents. We have a director of formation that says, okay, we need more of this. She handles the orientations, thank you. And if we see we need to add more to that or less, that's an issue. But that's straightened out. The other issue is we have a big Spanish or Hispanic speaking community. And of course, they really don't all speak English or understand English as well. So we used to use people that can help us translate, to have translators during some of the meetings. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, we did a testing where English-speaking people were listening to the Spanish people speaking, doing the conversation. They were leading the meeting, and we were listening on the earphones, how that was. So you get a feeling of what they're experiencing when we're speaking English and the translator is speaking the Spanish to them. So there's just things like that that say, all right, we want them involved. They're a big community, especially in certain parts of Long Island, so we want to do that. So again, working with Tom and the director of the formation, that's what we did. So we worked along very well together. And the position, I think, is, or my position, it's limited. I got 2 3-year terms, then I'm out. So I try to do the best I can with my experience and my knowledge of what's going on. I worked in the hospitality business for 30 years, and like I said, I lived and worked in many other places, so I know the different cultures that we're dealing with, and even on Long Island. And like, for example, our parish is in Huntington, very quiet little place right on the water, and then we took over this other parish, and it's only a mile and a half away, and it's a whole different personality. And to get together with that is not always easy. But you work with, again, through our director of formation, and we solve some of the problems. So it's a constant interaction. If Tom has a recommendation during the course of the year, we're going to do this, we're going to have to hire this person, we're going to have to do that, or let somebody go, which is even worse sometimes. And he discusses that with me, and I say, okay, let's listen on. He made the common sense decision to do what he had to do. So it's just a whole thing about being together and working as a team. It's never going to be 100% easy, but that's the goal, to keep doing that way.
Sorry, we're wasting the
Okay.
clock here. Just one other thing that I wanted to bring up. We talk about hiring executive director to CEOs. The other piece that we do, and I'm sure a lot of councils do this, also your board members. How do you vet them? We have a whole process where they got to fill out an application, basically get their resume, and they have to go through that then goes through the governance committee before people are put on the board. It's just a helpful hint, so you don't wind up with 12 bankers and that's it, or 17 insurance people. So you have a balanced board that way. Ralph, did you have another
One
comment?
quick thing. One thing I would add, and maybe take some questions after that, but one thing I prepared a number of years ago, and I've shared with other executive directors over the years, is I've got my executive director survival sheet from the transition period. Because every president's going to be different. I have 2 pages of things that every time a new president would be elected, they're my boss, the president does become your most direct contact person. You can't work for all your board, but I would have the president meet me for a couple hours and go through a list of things, just asking, how do you want to work together? There's so much it's about communication. I say I survived 8 presidents and they didn't fire me and I got to resign. So, but they have very different styles and you have different styles. And so I would go through a list. You know, I would say, well, you know, before I terminate a key employee, and you're right, you know, you always have the right to terminate. But do you want to know before I fire them or after I fire them? And some people, they have relationships with these people. They like to know it's coming. Some would say, that's your thing, Ralph, just let me know. But it's something that we talked about beforehand. Some even want to know things, if our truck gets in an accident, do you want to know about it? You know, do you want to wait till you hear it in the newspaper or whatever? Some didn't care. They say you're running the place. I would even ask, do you want a key to the office? And to know the burglar alarm code. Some wanted to know that. They felt, well, I'm in charge of the place, and if you're not around, they're going to look to me. And others said, no, you got an assistant. That's who's going to do it. And some just thought it was a matter of their own authority. You know, I'm the president. I should have a key to the place and know how to get in. Fine, you know. But to have those communication thing on the front. I also let all of them know who our lawyer was, who our insurance people were. Let them know, make sure they have your bylaws. Make sure your new president have a copy of your bylaws. That's your legal document. Some is just in time learning. So I have 2 pages of this stuff that we just would go through. How do you want to handle this? And make sure you know the other contact persons. If nothing else, you know, if something ever happened to the executive director, someone needs to know these things. It might be another staff person, but the president always should feel like they also have control of the organization.
Would you be willing to share that document with
I could dig it up again. I put it from the website or something, but I can find that again, because on both sides really, it was a useful communication tool, because there's a lot of things that upset some presidents over there. Well, I didn't know this and that. I said, well, the last person didn't want to know that or do it that way. So that helps a lot to facilitate ongoing communication.
So you got any questions? Let's talk.
So if we hire an executive director, do I have to raise funds designated specifically to hire an executive director?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I didn't see that one coming. She wanted to know if they're going to hire an executive director, do they need to raise funds specifically designated to pay that executive director?
Budget.
It would be part of the budget. So in the budgeting process, that's the way that you would handle that. You get it in the budget that you want to hire an executive director. Okay?
What kind of salary?
And then the council, the board is going to approve that, and then it's all official. Go ahead.
What kind of salary expectations does an executive director have?
Depends on their duties. So,
What did you describe them?
as I described them, well, if it's a staff, my staff is about 80. I think, what's your staff in Dallas, Luis?
80.
80? What's your staff in?
About 80.
About 80. Gee, Christmas. I'm underpaid. What you want to do, this is my suggestion, and I'm happy to turn the mic over to anybody else. My suggestion is think long and hard about what you want to pay. If you pay too little,
You get what you pay for.
well, you get what you pay for it, and also you might find some very, very mission-oriented person that comes in and they think they can survive on that pay, and in the end, they're unhappy, and maybe another council somewhere else poaches them. You know, they find it better. Karen, you want to speak to
I just
that?
have some advice. You could do just a comp analysis in your region too. You can check the 990s of other nonprofits who are similar size within your region, have similar scope, and then you know what you're up against, right?
Across the nation, it varies. I mean, in the Boston area, in the New York area, it's gonna be
Chicago
different
market.
than it is in northern Kentucky, than it is in southwest Idaho, or in Omaha, Nebraska. It's very different. So what you wanna do is you do want to do that comp analysis. You wanna talk to some people. Don't just do it yourself. Talk to some people that would know. Okay? Find out what some of the other comparable size nonprofits are paying their executive directors in the area. That starts to give you an idea.
United, your local United Way off would be a good source for comp salaries.
And the Better Business Bureau has even changed their discussion about that. They feel that you're better off hiring somebody with a lot of experience and knows what they're doing. Because they used to be, they frowned upon your operational expenses. They no longer do that. It used to be an 8% operating expense. Now if you got 20, it's fine with them. Because they'd rather have competent people running the nonprofits.
You don't want somebody, you know, embezzlement, all of that kind of stuff, malfeasance. I mean, that can happen with volunteers and it can happen with paid staff. So again, I think if you're looking for a quality person to step into that job, you know, try to have a polished job description. You need probably some polished people that know how to interview and know what to look for and help the board find the right person. I'm not saying you've got to hire an executive search team, but I mean, our national office hires an executive search team. They just hired one that handled the CIO, Chief Information Officer, and I think the CFO too. But anyway, and certainly CEO was hired with a national search team. Because again, these are critical decisions that you make. This is somebody that is going to be running the organization.
So,
Business support part of the organization, not governance.
if you're hiring an executive director, first time ever that we've ever should I have a couple years' salary in the account?
Oh, in the bank.
Before we hire that person? Yeah.
It's one of the biggest challenges. With when you're stepping off of that bank. Well,
So much depends on your cash flow. It's quite simple that if you have an ongoing flow of money, you don't need to be worried about it. If you already got stores or other income flowing in, maybe you don't need to have it because it's going to be replaced. If there's really no generating of sources, this could be part of maybe the long-range plan. Yeah, I would have a little bit more. Also, when you hire someone, make sure you have to hit the sweet spot that you get the person in that meets your expectation, but leave a little bit more because if they're doing a good job, you want to be able to give them a raise after a year. So it's a little tough in the beginning. Also, when you do salary comps, there's salary comp things out there. I'm always real leery of that if they're not very geographic specific. And by gosh, if they include health insurance or any health institutions in your community, just ignore it. Because doctors and health institutions may list something as an ED or CO, but they make more than I did.
absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, right here.
So I'm on the Board of Trustees of a district council in California, and our ED has been with us for maybe 12 years,
Okay.
and she's going to retire soon in the next few months, and so we're already
So
talking.
you're in a panic, right?
So there's a feeling that we want to have a Vincentian as our ED. Is that, you said there's questions we can't ask. I mean, is that something, is that legal? And has anybody else ever brought this up?
Sure. I'm thankful you're here, Ralph. That's all I can say.
So actually, there's a couple of things. I don't know that they need to be of Vincentian. There have been determinations that you can ask them to be a Catholic, though, legally. Now, we have two great EDs, at least that I know, and maybe more that are not Catholics, and they're model EDs as far as I'm concerned. So you can have something like they accept the values and understand the values of the Catholic Church, and probably be okay. But we've also had some job descriptions that say they must be a Catholic, and they've stood up in court. I think you could probably have your formation person and your executive director qualify under the bar there. Do they need to be Vincentian? Some of the best ones I know, including Dave Behringer, wasn't a Vincentian before he took that job. And he seemed to work out okay. So a lot of it's just, as long as they're, and I bet half the people in this room were Vincentians before they took their job, and they're great Vincentians now. So I'm limited to that. And sometimes it can even get in your way. I'm more interested in someone that's entrepreneurial, that someone has a good mind for detail, that will treat people fair and with justice, but also understand that if you went to my store workshop, you see a lot of stuff, it's all about management. And you need to have people that can be held accountable. You need to make sure whoever you hire, you're willing to fire. They don't cut the pay. Don't keep them around. Your employees are not the people we serve. They're your partners in the mission. And so sometimes you hire Vincentian, it's Joe's nephew or whatever. They get a good Vincentian. They're the worst people to hire because you're going to feel real bad firing them.
There's a lot of considerations in this business, isn't there? Does anybody else have a question? Yes?
You talked about your staff, referring to paid staff.
I'm talking to paid staff, although when we talk in my operation, in my staff, our staff, I shoot out my staff members that talk about, that use I too much, and I'm not gonna do that either. But in our staff, we include we have several administrative volunteers that are incredible. And they're included, and they're counted as staff now, they're not paid.
Any volunteers for the administrative aspect of?
I mean, it's gonna be, I think in each council, it's gonna look a little different. It depends on who's there and so on and so forth. But we have AmeriCorps in our operation, we have Vista, and those are all staff. The Vista, we don't pay, but they're staff. And so.
AmeriCorps, your operation, how's that?
AmeriCorps? So we've run AmeriCorps volunteers for a long time, probably 7 years. I've been there it's about 7 years. And AmeriCorps, it's just a program, it's national volunteer, it's a volunteer corps. Anyway, they get paid very little and you pay half of what they get paid. So it's pretty cheap, but you're not gonna get a ED with an AmeriCorps position.
What kind of jobs do they do, the AmeriCorps people?
They're frontline people. So the Vista positions are administrative. They're supposed to be building the organizational building positions. The AmeriCorps are more frontline. So they'll be at food pantries working and helping and facilitating. They're going to be, we use AmeriCorps in our reentry services program to supplement. Sometimes we can have somebody that's really excited come out of school or whatever. We can put them on as AmeriCorps. We can try them out, and then they're not fully paid staff. It still costs us some, but it's not terribly expensive. Go ahead.
Two questions. One, could you see a part-time executive director working out? Okay.
I think that's a distinct possibility for a smaller council. There's some conference executive directors across the nation too. And a part-time position is certainly something that could be done. I think it's going to be it's almost a unicorn. You got to find the right person in the right circumstance and so on and so forth. But I could see that working. Some council situations really don't need a full-time, high-powered management person. Maybe they don't even have more than a couple of employees. So do you need a high-powered executive to manage 2 employees?
The other part of that question, I think Ralph mentioned the executive secretary. Is there any of those that we're using?
I'm going to let the guy that mentioned executive secretary talk about it.
You could have such a position if it's just really helping out the president with some of the bookwork and those tedious tasks that are about. Just with the part-time thing, I would just point out a caution, however, that usually executive directors, CEOs are salaried people. When you start going with a part-time thing, you may be going into someone that is required to be an hourly worker because there's certain requirements to be met to be a salaried person in terms of independence, meeting workload, and if someone's really a secretary doing the things you assign them to do within the time frame you did it, you might be getting into the area that the Fair Labor Standards Act would consider an hourly employee. So just be a little careful about that.
Again, there's all kinds of laws. What we're going to do is, so our time is officially up. What I wanted to do is offer you, we do have the board responsibility here. Those 4 slides are all printed out right here. I've got some job descriptions here too, so if you want a couple of sample job descriptions, I won't promise you how good they are. I didn't read them all. They're very different. So I just wish you all the best. What I would like to too, I've got my card here on the table, and Tom's got his cards on the table. What I encourage you to do is don't try to do this alone. Come on up and get your stuff.